Hi guys, I wanted to review with you how to study for the AP Human Geography exam for the 2020 year. As you know, this year it's going to be online only due to the long-lasting effects of the coronavirus outbreak. And so it's going to look very different this year. And I know there's a lot of confusion. And so I'm hoping that this video can kind of dispel some of the myths and help you focus on how you need to be studying and what you need to be studying. So, as you know, this is not going to be like any test that you've taken before. In most AP exams, especially kids that are taking AP Human, normally they're freshmen and sophomores, you haven't taken an exam like this before. This is very different than your state end of course exams. It's going to be a lot more challenging. Even in a good year, it's going to be a lot more challenging for you. But this year in particular, it's going to be different. Your environment is going to be very different. The stress of how you're going to be taking this test, what's going on around you. Maybe someone in your family has lost their job. Maybe you're struggling because somebody close to you is sick. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on already, even before you've begun and sat down for this test. Then you put on top of it the fact that this is an FRQ only exam, and you're not around your teachers every single day reviewing. And by this point in time, my students would have taken a practice exam and we'd be heavily reviewing and kind of zooming in on things. It's really challenging this year to get you guys prepped for the exam, but that's okay. You have tons and tons of time. And really a couple things that I want to make sure that you guys really kind of push through are the I don't want to, I don't want to study. Oh, it's nice outside. Or, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to be held accountable for anything. You are being held accountable. And remember, this is a golden opportunity for you to really, really get ahead, to get prepped for college. I'm hearing from former students, and they're having to remote learn online right now. And it's a challenge for them to stay motivated. This is no different what you're doing. And it's just really good prep work for you and your time in college. So just remember that your success is going to be dependent upon your effort. And this is always the case in school, but never more so than with this particular exam. And of course, I'll say this, I say this all the time to my own students, start early, give yourself the gift of time. And the earlier you start, the less you actually have to review on a daily basis, because if you're doing and reviewing in little bits, a little bit at a time, maybe vocab on this day or maps on this day, instead of trying to sit down 5 days before the exam, where kids are staying up all night to review, that's just dumb. Don't review that way. Review a little bit at a time. You're building those pathways in your brain, so it's much easier to be able to retrieve the information. So when you are under stress and your amygdala is firing and going like crazy and you're having a hard time normally reviewing or retrieving that information, it won't be nearly as challenging for you in this type of situation. Okay, so here's what's on the exam. When you're looking at the exam, remember that this year, the FRQ exam covers officially units 1 to 5. But I also like to caution kids that there is a sprinkling of unit 6 and unit 7 in there. And so what do I mean by that? Okay, are you can have the urban models on there, or is raw style going to be on there? So I don't know, of course, but I can give you my best guess. I've been teaching this class for a long time now, and I, see how all of the pieces are pulled together. And I always give the illusion of this class is like a tapestry, and every single unit builds into that tapestry and everything gets woven together. And that's actually kind of what's so beautiful about this class, is it's not just like a learn it and dump it from your brain class. So units 1 to 5 require out of unit 6 basic information. For instance, things like levels of economic activity, primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, things like that. You cannot really discuss things like population and migration or agriculture if you don't understand, or levels of education, if you don't understand Human Development Index, which comes from the Development Industry Unit as well. Okay, same thing with regards to when you discuss urbanization. You have to have a basic understanding of urbanization to discuss the political unit. So don't freak out and don't think that you have to know everything from these units, because you don't. But take a look at the course description and see what's in there, and that will help to guide you as far as where you need to be and really what you need to know. And quite frankly, the honest truth is the college that you want this credit to go to, they're expecting that you have completed this class. So don't think, that you could be like, we didn't finish with unit 6 and unit 7 and I'm off the hook. you need to complete the class, because this is actually where everything comes together in this class, and where you really begin to see the big picture of human geography. So another thing to think about is that, in addition to, I misspelled testing here, but I need to go back and fix that. When you're looking at when you're testing Tuesday, May 12th at 3 p.m. Central Time. Okay, so use your time zone activity to figure out when you're actually testing, but realize that everybody's testing at the exact same time. And so you need to be prepared for that. So the structure, you have FRQ1. FRQ1 is worth 55% of your score. And FRQ1, you'll have 25 minutes to respond and then 5 minutes to upload your FRQ, okay, which is fantastic. I'm really glad they're giving you this time to get the technology kind of figured out. You also will have two stimulus items, okay, so it could be a chart, a map, a graph, something along those lines, where you have to piece those two pieces of information together in your writings in the FRQ. FRQ2 will be worth 45% of your score, and that will be worth 15 minutes to upload that FRQ, and 15 minutes to respond and 5 minutes to upload that particular FRQ. And you will have one stimulus material, so it could be an image, it could be a map, it could be any number of different things. So just kind of keep that in mind. So realize that none of the FRQs don't have some kind of stimuli involved. Okay, so where do you begin? As I always tell my students, vocabulary is the most important aspect of this class. I know many teachers, myself included, require long lists of vocab terms. We pull those terms from the course description, we pull them from the textbook. And the reason why we require vocab is because you cannot understand new content without having a common language. So just like an attorney has vocabulary in her practice, or like a doctor has vocabulary in his practice, you have vocabulary in your practice as a human geographer. And it's everything in AP classes, because you have to build your vocabulary for you to become fluent in the language of whatever class it is that you're taking. But remember, this is not just about memorizing definitions. This is also about applying those definitions. And if you don't have a teacher that gives you vocabulary list, remember to go to the course description. The course description is a great resource for you. This is the image that I have on the right here. And it's really easy to find. You just Google APHG course and exam description, and you'll find that information there. And what I tell my students to do is to highlight those items that you're not familiar with. And that's your signal to your brain to go look up those definitions. Go into your textbook to go find those definitions. There's tons of definitions out there. Your textbook is always probably going to be the best source for you. On the left from the course and exam description, I have for you, I kind of pulled for you an example of what an FRQ could look like, okay? And this particular one, it goes from A to G. And notice how many explain prompts are on here. There's a lot of those, which I'm going to go over in just a minute. But I went ahead and highlighted terms that you have to know. So I just wanted you to see the impact of vocabulary on your FRQs, and for you guys to make the connection between those two. Okay, so when we talk about stimuli, a lot of kids are like, Ms. Smart, what do you mean by stimuli? So I went ahead and pulled two examples from you from this awesome website called ourworldanddata.org, where there's just so much visualization of data for you. So the one on the right, there is a map of accrued birth rate, which you should know that term already. And then on the one on the left, you have total fertility rates. And so you could see here, these are just two separate examples of stimuli. If you want to practice looking at these items, go to Our World in Data and just go through the different sets of data that they have there. Go to populationpyramid.net and take a look at the population pyramids there. Check your textbook. Your textbook is going to be a great source for maps and graphs and charts. And then, of course, there's no better time to look at data and sets of data than in the news right now. I'm sure you've been inundated with maps and charts and graphs of everything that's happening with regards to the diffusion of this virus. So make sure that you utilize what's in front of you as well. Okay, so a lot of kids will say, hey, Mrs. Smart, should I go look up old FRQs to practice? And, I always tell them, that's fine. The information's there. But, the bottom line is the FRQ that's going to be put in front of you is going to be a new FRQ. And this year, in particular, it's a new structure as well. So old FRQs are great, and I love using them and kind of breaking them down with my students. But unless you have someone who understands how FRQs are structured and how they're written and understand the rubrics, it doesn't really do you a lot of good to just kind of look at them and be like, okay, this is the answer that I need to respond to with. You really need to have somebody help you break that down. One thing I will tell you to do is to go to the course and exam description and turn to page 159. And on page 159, you have a list of the verbs, the task verbs that they will give you with regards to FRQ. So they're telling you, these are some of the FRQs that verbs that you need to be able to respond to and how to respond to them, which is even more important. So especially terms like explain and describe and compare, those are words that kids struggle with because they just don't write enough. They don't, especially a word like compare, where you're supposed to be comparing and contrasting, you need to make sure that you're actually comparing and saying, okay, well, this particular item is this way and this particular item is this way, and they're not the same, or maybe they are the same. You can't say this, item A is this way and item B is not. Okay, that won't get you any points at all. I tell my students, you need to think of it like a math formula, like an algebraic equation where you're trying to balance the equation. So things like define and identify, that typically just needs a one-word response. And of course, this is why your definitions are so important, to have a really good command of the material. Because remember, the rubric to the FRQ is going to be formed after you take the exam. And so just kind of realize that it's important that you give a good, solid definition and you have a really good command of the material. So I hope that helps you. I try to keep this as short as possible, but I just wanted to remind you that you just have this incredible opportunity to save money for college, to earn college credit, and just take this time and do things that other people aren't right now, which is really kind of investing in their future.